I've logged in about 5 hours with Avowed so far through Game Pass on my Xbox Series X. And today I'm going to give you my first impressions, some of the good and the bad, and kind of give you my overall consensus on the game in the introductory area of Dawn Shore and let you know my honest truths with this and if it's going to be a game I'm going to continue to go back to and maybe play through it its entirety. So, of course, if you don't know, Avowed is part of the Pillars of Eternity. It's part of that lore. You had Pillars of Eternity 1, Pillars of Eternity 2, which Obsidian did have at the helm. And now you have Avowed, which is brand new from the CRPG now to your more open world RPG akin to the likes of Skyrim. But this is not a Skyrim clone, nor is it trying to be. Avowed is on its own footing, and it's really just picking up back off what they did with the Outer Worlds game and some of the great ways which we're going to discuss today as well. It does have some shortcomings for me, but let's first dive in to some of the really nice things I've enjoyed, and let's talk about the pros. So the first big thing that's really stood out to me is the companions for me so far have been really good. In the first area of Dawn Shore at Paradise, you come across immediately as you dock and head to the first city, Kai. Kai is a really huge standout for me. The voice actor, many of you probably know from the Mass Effect franchise, which is Brandon Keener. He did Garrus from the Mass Effect franchise, and for me, just a huge standout for me. Really nice character. They've done a great job really kind of just introducing his character, his kind of backstory into the world, if you choose to dive into it. You don't have to, which is something I respect in this game. They do respect your time. If you want to dive deeper into the lore, into the characters' backstories, you can choose to do so. If you want to keep it pretty simple or you just don't care, there's options for that as well. But so far for me, the companion system, the companion characters, I've really enjoyed, specifically standing out with Kai. Really like him. I think he's going to be a mainstay in the party. You can have two characters alongside you, and I think he's just going to be a person that offers utility. Really good voice acting, which goes a long way with companion characters, of course. And I like the insight he gives as well. So really enjoying him so far. One of the best voice acted characters as well in the game, period. Now, outside of the voice acting, I do think it's pretty solid. Now let's move in. I want to talk about the world, because I think this is really where Avowed stands. Really tall, really strong, and the world is fantastic. You have Dawn Shore, which is your first major region hub world that you're in. And this is something they did with the Outer Worlds, where you don't have, like Skyrim, this big, massive open world that's all connected. You, with this, just like they did with the Outer Worlds, you have region worlds or hub worlds that they're basically an open world hub. They're regionally different depending on where you're at. There's maybe some that are more snow driven, more like this one is much more lush and vibrant. So each region is going to be different, but each region is its own completely detailed open world space. And I really enjoyed the first one we've gone through, which is Dawn Shore, which has Paradise as the major city. It stands out. It's got a ton of detail. No matter where you're going, it's chock full of details. POEs for you to go check out, points of interest, POIs. And it's got lots of different enemy variety, from these lizard creatures to bears to spiders to bandits and others as well. And there's caves, there's different ruins for you to go through. There's all sorts of stuff all throughout the Dawn Shore region for you to explore. And I've barely cracked the surface of it. I've probably explored maybe half, 50% of the first region thus far, 5 hours in, spent in that region. And it's chock full of quests. You have your main story, which I'm going to be honest with you, I've barely touched the main story thus far, 5 hours in. I've been really captivated by the side quest content, which for any open world RPG, that is something that you're looking for. You want good side content. You want good miscellaneous quests. You want good elements outside of the main campaign pulling you through. And Avowed has done a good job thus far by getting me intrigued with some of the side characters you're meeting. One of my favorite side quests that's really stuck out to me was there's a brother looking for his twin brother that went on an expedition trying to find this relic. And I'm not going to spoil that for you, but it goes down some interesting twists and turns into this cavern system where you end up meeting some interesting characters that have some major implications potentially in choice and consequence that leaves you as the player some interesting choices to make. And I'm interested to see what the payoff for that will be down the line. because there were some big things you got out of that. And of course, with this, you get all sorts of really good loot out of these areas. I got a really good, unique weapon out of this boss fight that led towards the end of it. And that was just one side quest. It really stood out to me. There's various others. There's bounty missions you can go on where you can go hunt down these big targets at encampments, take them out, head back to the collector, and they'll give you some payout and money, which is a really good source of income and XP as well. So I've really enjoyed that element thus far. The main story has been intriguing so far, but I would be lying to you if some of the elements of this game, which we'll get into it, I'll get to the cons. Some of it does go over my head with the lore, and that's probably because I'm just a novice to this world. But continue to go on. For me, and this is just something from playing this game, I think I may prefer this style of hub region worlds compared to a massive open world game that's maybe not as richly detailed and content rich and have lots of good loot. Now, obviously, games like The Witcher 3, even Skyrim to an extent, do a really good job of having big open worlds that are full and rich in content and detail and story and characters and all this types of stuff. But I really enjoy what Avowed's doing, and even what the Outer Worlds did. I like having these region-based open worlds like Dawnshore, because they're able to do so much with the world. They're able to flush out each one in full detail with lots of great environments, characters, stories, loot, enemies, all of this kind of stuff. And I really have enjoyed the first hub I'm in so far, and I'm probably going to spend at least 5 to 10 more hours in it before I complete all the quests and then move on to the next region, wherever the story may take us. Now, going from there, let's move into the combat, which is something for me that started as a negative in the opening introduction. It kind of felt, it didn't feel as rewarding early on with the base weapons you get and everything, but as the game's gone on, it has won me over big time. As you get more powerful, as you level up, which right now I'm at level 7 currently, and getting more and more powerful. And even at level 7 right now, I have some really cool, unique weapons. My stats are continuing to improve. I'm getting new abilities, and I really enjoy the gameplay quite a lot in first-person mode. I'm primarily playing in first person. It's a lot of fun. It's weighty. If you're laying if you have a two-handed axe or warhammer or something, you're gonna feel the weight behind those punches, those hits. Right now, I'm going with like a sword, dagger, fire combination, and you can really feel just the speed of which we're using those, and the elemental effects that come with that. So the combat for me, it's varied. It's not super intricate. If you're looking for like a CRPG, Baldur's Gate style gameplay, you're not getting that here. It is a first person kind of hack and slash open world game. There are some tactical elements you can really implement into using your companion abilities, but it's not too deep. It's pretty fun. I would explain it as more arcadey, but that's not a bad thing. I think it's really rewarding. I think it's really fun, and it has so much for you to do. There's so many possibilities of combinations of weapons, elements, and all sorts of different stuff you can do with your abilities. It's really rewarding. I'm excited to open up more with that, maybe with the Magicka, like with the magic system, because right now I don't have a ton in my magic abilities, but there's so many cool magic abilities that I've seen and that I was looking through the skill tree. It's making me want to kind of dive into that area a little bit more. So that's a good thing. If I'm looking at the skill tree and there's an area I'm not invested into, it piques my curiosity. That's winning me over. That's making me want to try new things and respec potentially. And that's a good thing in my opinion. So gameplay's won me over. It's done a great job. The world so far has been amazing, like I mentioned. And then moving in, I think this game has a really good sense of progression. I'm constantly feeling like I'm being rewarded for my efforts, whether that be finding a new location, a mini boss that I didn't know was there, some secret stash of loot. There's always something that they're rewarding you with, whether that be loot, enemies, conversations, new story branches, whatever it may be. The quest log continues to grow as I continue to navigate into the undiscovered locations throughout Paradise or even the rest of Dawnshore. My quest log is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm trying to hunt down these different bounties, constantly getting new money, new loot, new rewards, meeting new characters, and I think that progression is key in open world games. And I think so far Avowed has done a really good job with continually rewarding your efforts and incentivizing you as a player to continue to go beyond the beaten path, to go look for some extra loot. You hear that kind of jingle where you know there's a chest nearby. You want to go check it out. You want to go find that loot because you never know what box, you know, what it may have inside of it, with the different color rarities and all. You may be missing out on some really cool, unique loot. So the progression has been really, really good so far. Now, the art style, this is something I've seen some discourse about online. It works for me. I know it's not a hyper realistic art style, which a lot of people were wanting whenever they saw the initial announced trailer of this game. It's still more akin to what they've done with the Outer Worlds. It's a distinct art style, kind of a mesh between what they did with the Outer Worlds and some other, you know, fantasy RPGs you may see out there. It's not hyper realistic, but it's not super cartoon arcadey. It's kind of this blend, and it really works. There's some areas in this game that are outright beautiful. Very, very cool vistas and landscapes you can look at. The enemy design is pretty good so far as well. It's getting more and more diverse. I was a little bit worried that I'd be only fighting lizard creatures and spiders and bears, but there's more and more that are starting to open up. So that gives me hope that hopefully the other regions will have a lot of different types of enemies and enemy rarities as well. But so far for me, art style, graphics, I have no complaints. Now, I have been primarily, as you see some of the footage, playing on performance mode. I'm going to get into the cons in just a bit, but for me, I've been switching lately, so let's get into this. So I've been playing performance mode for the most part. It aims for a 60 frames per second at reduced quality. But for me, this goes to the cons. It didn't achieve that a lot. 60 frames per second is the goal. It's not locked, nowhere near locked at 60 frames per second on the Xbox Series X. And that's an issue. This is one of the cons for me. The performance mode has a lot of inconsistencies, especially if you're in the densely laid area of Paradise, the big major city. It dips all the way into the 40s sometimes, and that is jarring. It's got a lot of stutter issues at times. So the game's performance overall is solid, but it's not perfect. And especially on performance mode, I do not recommend playing it on performance mode unless you have to. Because it's not a lock 60, so you're gonna feel the inconsistencies and the stutter and the stat and all that with the frame drops. It was a bit of an issue for me. Since then, I have switched because I do have a 120 hertz monitor. I've switched that now to the 120 hertz mode, and now I can play on balanced quality or balanced mode. So in the base game, there's two modes. You got quality, which is shooting 4K for 30 frames, and you have performance, which is shooting 60 frames per second at 1080p. In the middle, if you have a 120 hertz screen, you have balanced mode, and this is shooting at a higher quality resolution but at a locked 40 frames per second, which is an option I wish more games had, because that extra bump in 10 frames, it's felt, it's good. It doesn't feel choppy like 30 frames per second to me does. So far, performance mode has been very, very consistent. The quality of visuals is much improved as well over what you had with performance mode. So for me, the con that was performance mode that wasn't working well is now, mitigated, because I think the balanced setting is a huge pro. If you can do it, play on balanced mode. Balanced mode is my preferred method. Quality, just 30 frames just doesn't work, but balanced at 40 is excellent. It does a really good job there. So check that out if you have that option. Now, moving on to some other cons, some of the negatives, nothing game breaking for me, nothing that's, really hurt my experience overall throughout the game so far. But for me, the tutorial zone was a drag. First of all, learning through the lore, trying to set up the character and everything, it throws a lot at you. Some of the main story beats, I understand. I get it. I understand there's this rot going around. You're trying to rid it. You've been sent as the envoy to go take care of this as a godlike and all this. I get that. But for me, the tutorial zone was very, very linear, as most tutorial zones are. And it just took too long for me to get through that tutorial, to get to Dawn Shore, to get to your first major region hub. And, that was a bit of a drag. That was probably the first 30, 45 to an hour, depending on your play style. And it was a bit of a drag to get through. But once I've got through that tutorial zone to the first hub, the first major region, the game picked up and it opened up before us, as I talked about with the open world and the combat and all. So for me, the tutorial zone was a drag. didn't kill my experiences. Obviously, I've continued on, and I've been loving the game more and more and more as I've put more and more time in, which is a great thing. That's what you want. You don't want to start with the game hot and then you kind of cool off. This game's done the opposite, where I started a little bit on the cold side, but I've been warming up more and more and more to it as the game's opened up and evolved before me. So that's a big plus. Outside of that, some of the other cons, the game's lore. For some of you, this is going to be a non-problem, non-issue, but for me, it throws so much lore at you that there's a lot of times I am just confused because it seems foreign to me, because it is. I have no prior knowledge or experience with the Pillars of Eternity series. The first two games, which of course were CRPG titles. So I have no idea what's going on with this game's world, the factions, the different races, all this stuff. No idea. No idea how any of this works whatsoever. So there's a lot that just goes over my head. And of course, they do a good job with the codex system in this game, where if you want to dive into the lore, if you want to dive into those details, you can read it. It's all cataloged as you find different books, scrolls, journals, all this stuff. You can dive in, you can read all this stuff, and you can even pull it up in your conversations, which is a nice thing. If you're confused, if they mention a character or a different race or something, you can pull up the lore codex while you're in this conversation to kind of give you that context. So that is a nice thing. But for me, just not being akin to the world, it's jarring. It's something I'm having to grow through as I learn more about these characters and learn more about the world we're in. It's just going to take some time, I have a feeling. But for me right now, it's not all clicking in terms of the story, because so much of it just doesn't resonate because I have no prior knowledge or history with that whatsoever. Now, the only other negative that I really want to talk about outside, I've talked a bit about performance issues, talked about the tutorial zone with the drag, the dialogue system sometimes. I will say this, the dialogue system doesn't break the mold. It doesn't try to do anything new. It's very samey. If you've played the Outer Worlds, if you've played Fallout, you know what you're kind of getting here. It doesn't try to do anything new. I would say this, if you're trying to complete a quest, there's probably 2-3 options to complete that quest. You know, it could be like, if there's a guy, all right, you can either save him, you can kill him, or you can have somebody else kill him, or you can pay him off maybe, right? So there's different ways you can do it, but it doesn't give you like Baldur's Gate, where you have like literally 10 different ways you can complete a storyline or a quest. It kind of goes by the numbers, where if you're in a conversation, if you play Fallout, you know what I'm going to talk about here. But if you go to conversation, you have your kind of your character class option, which for me is a war hero. So I'm going to have my war hero option pop up a lot. Then you're going to have a skill check. If you could pass the skill check, like a perception check or something like that, you can do that. And then you have your kind of gruff, sarcastic, mean option. And then you have your like dive in deeper, give me more detail option. So nothing that breaks the mold. It's not bad. It's not amazing. It just kind of is what it is. And if you like it, and if you have no problems with it, it will be a non-issue, because it does open up enough where you can still have some choice and consequence, of course. And my last qualm or complaint I do have about this game, and this one for me is just for the RPG roleplay style of this game. I would have liked for them to have given me more options in the character creator for different races, because there are various races in this game you come across, such as Kai, and I would have liked to have seen them open up, and maybe for story purposes, because you are a godlike, maybe they had to make sure you can't be any other type of character, because for all I know, maybe godlikes are only one specific type of character race. I don't know. Okay, but I would have liked to see them open up and give us, you know, at least 2, 3, 4 more options for races instead of just the one you're kind of thrust into. But that's just a minor complaint. Doesn't break the game for me. I just like to have those options in a character creator whenever you are in an open world RPG. But that's really all I have for complaints. I think overall, I've been impressed by Avowed. It's been a really fun game to play so far. I'm really excited to dive in deeper and deeper into the game and to see what these other regions and world hubs have for us. And I'm excited to learn more about the game's lore and story. As I've talked about that as a con, I do want to learn more. I do want to see where these characters take us, what side characters and companion characters will continue to meet, and see where the story involves and kind of unravels down the line. But for me, the world's so much fun to explore. The gameplay is so much fun to play. It's got a really good progression, loot system in it as well. And for me, it's kind of scratching that itch that I wanted an open world RPG. So Avowed, it's won me over thus far, 5 hours in. I'll probably, if I beat the game in its entirety, do a full-fledged review probably weeks and weeks from now. But let me know your thoughts down below for Avowed. What are your thoughts on it right now? Are you enjoying it? Not enjoying it? Share it all below. Stay safe. God bless. And we'll catch you back in the next one.